You're listening to the When Life Hands You Lemons podcast.
But in an entry-level film production, it's one strike and you're out. You're fired. I'm not calling you back.
If your goal today is to make a basket, we're gonna make that basket.
The minute you create something, as soon as it's made tangible, you have a copyright in it.
How do I get our guys to sound that big, that full when they do the harmonies?
And I'm your host, Lennon Seahawk. Let's get to the show.
Yeah, so my name is Liat Abada, and Liat, being an incredibly rare name, is pronounced like the car, the Fiat, but with an L. So it's a fun way for people to remember how to say my name. And I have been working in music for nearly 10 years, predominantly doing marketing and project management, which is kind of everything from artist relations to creating marketing plans to executing them to being the person who oversees everyone else. But I got into music because I love music, really, because I was that kid in high school who was convinced they had the best taste and knew exactly what everyone should be listening to. So if you love pop, I was going to tell you who the pop artist was that you were going to love. And if you were more into pop punk, but with a heavy bass, I was going to find the artist you were going to be obsessed with. And I was so hilariously convinced that I was this impeccable tastemaker that I kind of spun that into this career in music, being like, wow, I'm really passionate about music. Maybe this could be a real thing. Maybe this could be a job. And as it turned out, it could, which was very, very cool. And so I started as an intern in A&R at Columbia Records, and I thought, oh, A&R, that's finding artists. All I want to do is tell people what to listen to. I want them to find the musician they're going to be obsessed with. And I learned actually through that internship and through working with the marketing director at the time, his name is Nina Webb, but working with her, I learned that what I actually was describing is marketing, right? Is the psychology behind music of connecting a fan to what they're going to love. I didn't necessarily want to be the person who was going to discover the next big star. I wanted to be the person who was going to connect them to their fans. And that's exactly what marketing is in the smallest nutshell. So I started as an intern in A&R, and then I went and became an intern in marketing at Columbia and also at Warner at Atlantic. And when I was graduating, it just happened to be really, really good timing. And there was an opening in international marketing at Sony Music. And at Sony, international is a shared service, which means that it would function where there was one department at the time that worked across the three major labels, RCA, Epic, and Columbia. And I started in international marketing, which I think was really beneficial because it allowed me to see music on a global scale, to understand consumption and to understand sales and how anyone from the US, an artist from the US, can translate to every other country and make an impact there and have, generate growth outside the US. And it gave me a real global perspective on music, which I think was a really significant starting point. And I was working there, and it was fantastic. And one day, one of the labels I worked closely with had an opening in marketing, and someone actually called me to tell me about it. And I was like, hey, you know what? It's actually really what I want to do. I would love to come and work at Epic in US marketing. That's where I started as an intern. And I started in marketing as an intern, not at Epic, but I was like, yeah, I would love to do that. So I ended up going to Epic, and I did this role, which I don't even think exists anymore. And it was somewhere between marketing and live experiential marketing, and also kind of this central hub for everything artist on tour or artist on promo tour related. So I designed showcases and set up all the logistics and hired all of the vendors, and I handled tour marketing, coming up with posters and making sure college reps had them. And then I also came up with some marketing plans, and then I also handled anytime we had a release coming out, let's say, I would go to every single department and speak to them about what we could do for their team, for the radio team. Do they need to go to these 10 different radio stations? And if they're going to be in Chicago, can they also go do a morning TV show there for the publicist? And kind of coordinating between all these different departments to make sure that there was real visibility across all the verticals, being this a central hub for it all, which was really exciting and really cool. And I also dealt with budgeting and tickets and a million other things by hand in every single pot. And I loved it. And kind of the way of the music industry, as everyone kind of knows, is that, you go from one label to the next because you work with someone and your voice translates and people hear about you. So I got a call one day from someone who had worked at Epic and was now working at Republic. And they asked me if I would ever just kind of come in and see what Republic's trying to build. And I was like, well, okay, I'll come and meet with them. And 2 hours later, I walked out with a job. And it was kind of this moment of feeling like I was coming to that position I'd wanted all along, which is being the person who's going to connect the fans to music. Because I'd been doing that at Epic through a lot of experiential kind of opportunities, but now I was going to be the product manager, the marketing director, the person who's kind of in charge of each artist. And my first boss, John Fleckenstein, actually said it best, and he said that if you do good work, people will notice. And I think that that's taken me very far in my career. So I went to Republic, and I was a marketing director there. And then after that, I went back to Sony and was a marketing director there as well. And that's kind of the nutshell of my experiences. I can explain what a marketing director does as well if you want, but I feel like that's a separate question.
No, absolutely. Go ahead.
I've been talking for so much.
No, you're perfect. You're doing really well.
Okay, great. So a marketing director at a record label is also called a product manager. Product managers vary in titles. That's usually just based on seniority, experience, et cetera, et cetera. And a marketing director, the way I describe it, is in 3 bullet points, because marketing is this really wholehearted word that encompasses so much. So how do we drill that down into 3 bullet points? The first of which is creative. So it's defining the end goal with an artist and then coming up with creative ideas to achieve that goal. So that can be creative visuals, it can be what a music video is going to look like, or it can be a big, creative, exciting idea that's going to connect them to their fans. And the second bullet point is business. So that's thinking about when do I want each piece of content to come out, speaking to the artists and their managers about the best strategic goals for each content and when to release them and how that's going to impact things, and thinking a lot about budgeting as well. How am I going to make the best return on the investment for the artist and the label? And how am I going to ensure that this budget extends throughout the entire life cycle of a campaign, not just the first week, and then kind of building on that as the campaign grows? All these business decisions. And the third bullet point is being that lead on the artist, being that project manager, which is the idea that there's one person that an artist, that their managers, that anybody they work with can come to and can be the voice for that artist within the label. They can tell me about any goals, dreams, aspirations, any issues they're having, and I'm going to problem solve it for them. And then on the other end of it, I'm going to be the central point for that artist within the label as well. So if our publicity team wants to put out a press release, I'm going to read it, I might edit it, I'm going to approve it before it goes live. If our advertising team wants, if we talk about putting out ads, I'm probably going to work with them, kind of instruct them on what the creative should look like. And then as they create it, I'm going to give notes and say, no, use this footage instead, and let's do this, and then write the copy for it and decide how much we'll spend on it and work across every single internal department. So if our sales team needs information, I'm going to provide it to them. If our digital marketing team has an idea, they're going to run it by me. I'm going to speak to the artist. I'm going to kind of speak with the digital team, decide if that's really the best way to proceed. So it's being this central hub for both everyone within the label and everyone outside the label. So I'm the lead on every artist on my roster, which means working very cross-functionally and coordinating a lot of people and a lot of teams of people and people who might have conflicting goals, right? People who might have conflicting ideas, and coming up with the best possible situations that the artist is happy, management is happy, the label is happy, and everyone within the label is working consistently towards that end goal that we defined in the beginning, making sure that I'm staying on top of all the work streams and all the different people working on an artist to make sure they're all working efficiently and working in a way that their voice is heard, but also that they're working effectively towards this end goal.
First of all, holy crap. It sounds like your job is like the marketing director / project manager or product manager is like a 10-person job. Like, I feel like there should be 10 of you. I mean, granted, you do have like the public relations team, you do have the advertising team, like they're all working, but you have to like delegate these things. You have to give direction. Like, I feel like that is like a 10-person team. Like, how do you deal with all of these people coming at you with all these different things? And how do you stay organized with what you told who and all this insanity of, especially, making sure, like, because the label has a different budget and view than maybe the artist does, and then the artist has a different view from the artist manager's vision. So, like, how do you keep everybody in the loop and keeping everything under budget and without pulling your hair out, basically?
Yeah, the marketing director job is definitely a lot of different things on your plate. And I always say that it really is a team effort, because even if I'm leading on an artist, there's so many people who do so many things. And I think it's important to recognize the contributions other people make, especially when you're thinking about something that's as impactful as music. But in terms of how to how to manage your time when there are so many different people and so many different things you need to do, I think for me, it boils down to the two sides of my personality that meld very well into this job, which is that I'm exceptionally organized. I love a good like to-do list.
Oh my gosh, me too. I could nerd out on to-do lists all day long.
Yeah, like I'm very organized. I love kind of thinking of how to make things work really well, really efficiently, and using the best of my time. And I consistently think about my time in terms of how long will something take me realistically, and then how do I budget my time accordingly? And the other side of my personality is being a people person, which is just that I like working with other people. I love working with artists. I love working with managers. I take great strides to always make sure that my communication style is very adaptive, that I'm speaking to someone in a way that they feel comfortable with. I'm always being like very true to my own voice. I'm never going to be dishonest with anyone. I think it's really important that you have integrity in the suggestions you make and the strategies you come up with. They're based on your own skill set, and therefore you should be proud of them and feel confident in speaking them. But I do think there's a way in which to speak with other people that meets their communication style, so that if they're better on the phone, you always talk to them on the phone. And if they'd rather just shoot off a short email, you keep your emails really short and succinct. So kind of meeting people where they want to be met, and then also just being very organized on your own kind of job scale.
Mm-hmm. So how do you manage, like, because it sounds like you're working like 130 hours a week, and I'm sure there was probably times where you probably came close to it. So how do you manage, like, when you're working on a big project, you've got artist managers contacting you, you've got the artists contacting you, you've got like the creatives contacting you for like the album artwork or the social media banners, and then you've got the advertising team coming at you, and then you've got maybe some marketing people underneath you. Like, how do you kind of keep that work-life balance? Like, I'm sure you have like a work phone and a personal phone, and you have your emails connected to your phone. Like, how do you just kind of shut everything off? I'm done with work for the day. I'm going to have some me time. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to watch a movie, whatever.
First thing, work-life balance.
Uh-oh. Here we go. That's not good.
Work-life balance. I will say that I think that for me, I very much feel that my work is a big part of my life in a very positive way. So admittedly, I probably know that I'm not necessarily doing what would be traditionally considered a work-life balance. Instead, I give all the time I need to complete the work in a timely manner and in the best possible way. And then take the rest of the time I have and use it in ways that enrich my life. Because for me, I think a career and my job and the work I do, I love it and I'm passionate about it. And therefore, it being a part of my night or extra hours, that for me is not an issue. That's something I enjoy and I love. So I never think of it as, oh, I don't have good work-life balance because I love what I'm doing. I'm married. I have a husband. He perhaps, I don't know what his answer to this question would be.
Probably very similar to what you kind of the laughing, like, ha, 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 like work life. Right.
Yeah. No, I think my husband met me while I was already working in the music industry, and he knew that this is so important to me that for me, I sincerely believe that if you're going to spend your days working at a job, then it should be something that is worthwhile to take you away from the people you love. So if I'm going to spend my days in an office instead of with my husband or my parents or my siblings, then it should be in an office I love, doing work that I love, because that means that the hours I've spent, they matter in my life. They matter to me. The outcome is important to me. And so I think he always understood that about me. So he has never felt this neglect, even if I'm working really late, and even if I, need to take emails over the weekend. I do try to make sure that I'm giving time to other things in my life that are significant. But I think that he gets it. He gets that there's a reason why I work in this industry, and there's a reason why then I'm working extra hours if I have to. And if I don't have to, great. Like, let's go out to dinner. Let's go to a movie.
Right. And I can kind of agree to that too, because when I get into a project, if there's something that I really, really enjoy, like if I set myself, I have 3 podcasts. Granted, like each podcast episode takes 3 to 5 hours to edit and like go from like just recording it to creating the intros and the outros to then uploading, scheduling, creating the YouTube video, creating the show notes and everything. It takes 3 to 5 hours. So like if I'm like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get everything done, like I'm going to work for 12, 15 hours straight. Like I'm going to get everything done. So like even I'm like, oh yeah, work-life balance, right? We had plans to do this and that, but I have stuff to do. So I completely know where you're coming from with the work-life balance.
Totally. And I think sometimes there are ways to incorporate your work into your life that makes other people feel like they're a part of what you're building. So like if you have to go to a show for work, you can bring 2 friends who you know are really big fans and tell them to come and have them either buy tickets or get to meet the band or something. And so you're still building your friendships, you're still dedicating time to the people around you, but you're also kind of showing them what it is that you do and making them experience something great. I actually remember that there's this band called A Great Big World, and I worked with them when I was at Epic. And right before their song Say Something blew up at radio, they did this small show in Manhattan, and I convinced like 5 of my friends to buy tickets. I was like, you'll meet the band, buy come get 5 tickets. I brought along 2 people who work in the industry. Like one was a writer for a magazine kind of thing. And it ended up being this great night where there were like, I guess there must have been 9 or 10 of us total who were all just enjoying this concert. And half of them were people in the industry who, like I said, I kind of brought strategically. And half of them were friends of mine who I was just like, you're going to love this. You have to come see this because you're going to love it. And it's this great moment, where you see how your career and your friendships and your life and your work can meld together really well. I think that's kind of the end goal, is to make it never feel like you're doing work or life, to make it feel like both these things are intertwined hand in hand very well.
Mm-hmm. And that's very hard for a lot of people to accomplish. I think even I'm struggling with it today. Like it's you have to work very hard to get to a place where you want to be, and like it just doesn't happen overnight, and it may take 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 years to like ultimately be like, yes, I'm satisfied with my life. I'm happy with what I'm doing. I'm proud of my accomplishments. And I live by the quote of, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And I've spoken with, sounds like you and a bunch of other podcast guests on the show, and they love what they do, and they don't even feel like they're working. They get up and they get to do what they love. So it doesn't even feel like work, and they get paid for it. So it's like a huge bonus. Like I'm literally getting up and I'm mixing music, or I'm writing music, or I'm mixing for my favorite band, or I'm creating marketing budgets, or I'm organizing emails, and I get paid for it. So
Exactly.
It's crazy how that works. But and I think that's something a lot of people struggle with today. Like they're in these 9-to-5 jobs and they hate it, but they say, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Then do it.
It's so true. And there's this running joke in my friend group, because I am very social media savvy. Obviously, I run a lot of digital marketing campaigns. I do a lot of digital marketing, and I love social media. So there is kind of this running joke in my friend group where it's like, well, if Liat didn't put it on Instagram, did it happen?
Oh my gosh.
If Liat didn't post about it on Facebook, is it real?
Yeah.
And it's this running joke, but we when we laugh about it, we're always like, well, it is also, a big part of her day job. So it's kind of okay if she's also taking a lot of photos of her food. It's like, oh, okay. It's what she does during the day. It's okay if it extends to the night as well.
It's kind of like that joke where if a tree falls in the woods, does it make a sound?
Well, not if it wasn't on Instagram.
Right. And if Liat didn't post it, then the tree obviously didn't fall. So if a tree didn't fall, then it couldn't have made a sound.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where because I see a lot of value in social media, the fact that I do it in my work life and then I also do it in my personal life makes sense. It's kind of one of those bridging things where it's like, oh yeah, of course she does it in her personal life because she does it in her work life. Or is it, of course she does it in her work life because she does it in her personal life? Either way, I just love doing it.
Mm-hmm. So why do you like social media so much? Like, other than you have to do it for your job, but like what else like keeps you drawn to it? Like, oh, I'm so excited to create tweets, or I'm so excited to, create some Facebook advertisements or whatever the situation may be. Like, what makes you so attracted to social media?
Yeah, I think I love social media because for me, social media started more as a self-guided journey, being like, oh, I'm going to post on social media as a diary of sorts so that in years from now, I'll be able to look at this photo album and be like, oh, that's what I did, in 2019, and kind of thinking of it as this very like selfish, documented life. And instead, over time, what's actually happened is that I've seen the world from other people's perspectives, which I think is something that didn't exist before. The idea that I can know exactly how someone feels on the other side of the world is an amazing concept. And to have that direct correlation with someone is really, really a big deal. And I think it's led to a lot of community for me. So whether it's me kind of discovering friends over a shared interest, and now I happen to be a vegan. I know everyone knows when you're vegan because you say it, but it plays in here because it's like not most of my friends in everyday life aren't necessarily vegans, but I have a whole community of friends who I go out to dinner with who I met on Instagram. And I have family who live on the other side of the world, who live in Israel, who I communicate with all the time on Messenger. And it's kind of this, I view social media as really connecting the world, being able to see my close friends and family's perspective on things, being able to see strangers' perspectives on things, being able to update the world on what's going on in my life, or even being able to, like I originally said, have a recollection of what occurred, being able to look back on my memories and say, wow, that was so great. I think that's just what attracts me to social media. And I think coming back to music with it, right, if a huge part of what draws me to music is the idea of connecting fans to the music they'll love, well, that's what social media has the power for. It's such a direct connection between an artist and their biggest fans. And that wasn't possible. When I was growing up, I couldn't just, DM like the Backstreet Boys. That didn't happen. Mm-hmm. I wish it did. That would have been awesome.
Exactly.
If I could comment on a Spice Girls photo and have them write back, oh my God, 9-year-old me would have totally lost it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that's what attracts me to it.
That's kind of funny because going back, I don't remember what it was for. I believe it was not this year's Ultra Music Festival, but last year's Ultra Music Festival. There was like after parties after the main stage had shut down and kind of the festival had closed. Like DJs and other artists were doing like after shows, and they would go to these venues. They would have them set up, and then these venues would be like, "Oh no, sorry, we're actually not going to do it." So then they would tweet out like, "Oh, this venue canceled. My team and I are working on getting another venue. Stay posted." So then everybody in Miami was following this artist or these artists. And then when they got a new venue, they would tweet out like, "Hey, got a new venue. Here's the address. Let's party." And that's crazy how fast that could have been done. Like that could not have been done 10, 15, 20 years ago. If somebody canceled an after party, it was canceled. Like time to go to bed.
And it's amazing. You think about Twitter and you think, wow, it's just one sentence. But think about the impact one sentence has. Think about how fantastic one sentence can be for your fans. One sentence can make the difference between being able to hang with your favorite DJ after a concert or not. And that's like, thanks, Twitter. Great.
Right. And then you have the people that are, they're following the artist. They're at these events. They're live streaming. You can literally attend these events from the comfort of your own home. And you can live like you have like the mainstream that maybe the artist is doing, and then you can find other people who are commenting or they're watching, and you can like click their page or their Twitter page and see like what they've been doing in Miami or what they're doing at the show, and you can literally live through the people actually at the event. So it's just mind blowing and how quickly and effective these types of things are, because like when things like that happen, they almost know that, oh, the artist is very active on Twitter, he's going to keep us posted. And then once they first tweet out like, hey, I'm looking for another venue, we're thinking about this one, stay tuned. An hour later, boom, they got a tweet. Like people will turn their notifications on, so like because they really want to see this, and they're like, oh, I want to be notified like whenever he tweets, because it's probably going to be about where he's going to be performing or she's going to be performing. So it's just crazy how like the second they hit tweet, somebody's getting an instant notification so they can be immediately at the venue. It's just crazy.
I think that drives back to this idea of accessibility, which is such a big part of music now, right? So you have accessibility to an artist through social media where you can actually get to know them, get to know their voice, feel like you have built a direct connection with someone who you very likely have never met, and you feel like you know who they are because of what they're choosing to portray. And that's an accessibility thing that is totally a game changer when you think about music. And then you look at platforms like Spotify and YouTube and Tidal, and I could go into detail about each one of those three and say why it's amazing, and Apple Music, and talk about these 4 platforms and explain why every single one of them is so impactful in very different ways. And it all drives back to accessibility. We didn't, the idea that you can just stream music in a moment's notice through Apple Music, or that you can stream music and watch a video and listen to a podcast on Spotify, or that you can watch a music video and watch a fan cover and watch a TV show on YouTube, or, Tidal, where they have everything on one page, where it's a music video and it's the music and it's the artist platform, and it's all like in one cohesive like snapshot. That's incredible accessibility to music. It's incredible accessibility to everything you'd ever want from an artist, and that didn't exist. And that's really what I think is pushing the industry forward, is this idea of accessibility.
Mm-hmm. And you look at platforms like Spotify. Look at how they've revolutionized something as simple as a playlist. Look at how impactful a playlist can be. Like people, artists, musicians, they are putting in their press releases, I see it all the time. I'm a journalist at like different publications, and I'm getting press releases constantly, but I'm seeing made it on New Music Friday 3 times, was made it on New Music Friday in Germany, Switzerland, and the United States, or Latin America, or whatever the situation may be. It's just like they are putting in their press releases which playlist they're making it in. And it's like it's a playlist, but look at how impactful that had to have been for an artist to include it in their press release. That's just crazy to me.
Spotify is so brilliant and so fantastic, really so game-changing, really a disruptor. Spotify is just, there's so much brilliance in it, because what is a playlist, right? It's either someone curating what you're going to listen to based on a very niche title. So saying college a cappella, this is curated by someone who knows and loves college a cappella. And if you happen to be searching for college a cappella, now you're going to want to listen to this Spotify playlist. And then they took this idea of, oh, I'm going to be the person who tells you what you want to listen to. And then they evolved that into, well, actually, because I'm a tech company and because I have so much data, I can actually come up with a playlist that is specifically designed for you, not based on what a curator knows is great in a genre, but based on what you've actually listened to. And so for me, like, okay, so you've literally done all I've ever wanted to do in life, which is connect fans to music. You've, A, told them what they're gonna love based on very specific pinpoints, and then B, heard what they've listened to and used genius technology, used an algorithm to say, well, you've listened to this and therefore you're going to like this. Or you've listened to this in the past and therefore it's going to be on your release radar because a new album came out. Or they had a running playlist, which was, I don't know if you've ever done Spotify running this playlist, but the idea was you started to run, it calculated your beats per minute by you holding your phone, and then played songs by artists you've listened to in the past that match that beat per minute. So you ran to the music you loved by artists they knew you loved. It's great.
Yeah.
That's so smart. That's using technology. That's thinking about music from both the technological standpoint and from the fan and artist standpoint. And that obviously made a huge impact on record labels and artists because, like you said, it's coming up in press releases. It's not just coming up in press releases. It's
part of people's marketing plans.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a whole designated part of a marketing strategy now.
Mm-hmm. It really is. And like it's getting to be kind of a scummy world, especially in the electronic world. So, I mean, I don't know if you've heard of it. I'm sure you have. But people having these companies that run these playlists or that say they have, oh, I have so many connections to Spotify, or I have these people that run this playlist and that playlist, and they've got X amount of followers, and we can, quote unquote, guarantee you to get placement in that. So these artists are spending thousands or hundreds of dollars to get their song placed. Well, then when that song is pitched to the playlist owner, they're like, oh, I don't like that song. And it doesn't get placed. And then the artist is out, $500 to $1,000. I've heard of it happening, and I read about it. So like these people are starting to get crummy about it. But at the same time, it's because Spotify has proven to revolutionize it and show its importance in people's marketing strategies and even artists' paychecks.
Yeah, I think what I've seen is that a lot of these companies are working very hard to combat this notion of I have a buddy who's going to get you on a playlist, right? So like that's why there are now artists can submit their songs for playlists directly through Spotify. And I think a lot of these streaming platforms are taking it very seriously because they realize what a major part of a musician's career they can play. And you really want that to stay as something that's pure and beautiful and based on the music, not based on a company that says, if you pay me $2,000, I'm going to get you 100 streams. And you don't even know if those are genuine streams or if it's guaranteed or where it's coming from. And as someone, I've written all the marketing plans for all my artists. So I write them, I come up with them, I strategize them. It's a whole big shebang. I know that when I start a marketing plan, I take into consideration every single thing that can possibly achieve the artist's end goal. So whether it's increasing social media following or increasing consumption, whether that's streaming or sales, or maybe it's just increasing physical sales, whatever it may be, I'm going to consider every single outlet for that. So I will think about a separate plan for Spotify and for Apple Music and for YouTube Music and for Tidal and for basically any partner I have. I'm going to think of them as a real partner. I'm going to think of these platforms as a partner through which, A, I can expose the music to more people. B, I can expose the music to the people who are going to enjoy it the most or who didn't know they were going to love it, or the fans who are searching for it. And I'm going to think about these partners very individually and, kind of playing on the strengths based on who the artist is and what the platform is. And I'm going to build that into my marketing plan. It's really important, which is, if you think about 15 years ago, nobody was like, let me write in my marketing plan streaming.
Right, right. And that's crazy how far it has come, because Spotify's doing so many things. And it's funny that not many other platforms are catching on and doing similar things. Like I know Apple Music has playlists, but you don't see people putting in their press releases like, hey, I made it on Apple Music, Beats One or whatever. They say like they made it on Beats One Radio, but that's different from a playlist. So it's almost always Spotify, because you make it in like Mint. How many followers does that have? Like 50 million, 30 million, something like that. It's just an insane amount of people. So to get added to one of those playlists, I mean, you could almost see overnight success. So like you're catching, because I mean, look at how many people are listening to that, or how many new people you're touching just by being added to that playlist. And people follow these playlists just because they want to find new music, and they know it's updated every week or every day, and they love the music that's added to it every day or every week. And I'm still trying to comprehend it, and I'm trying to think of like what could be next. Like what are these other platforms doing that's going to make them stand out and come up with the next big thing? I see so many tech companies trying to come up with it, but I just can't see some of these things catching on, like Spotify's playlisting and how important it's become, because I mean, you're literally creating a virtual compilation CD.
There's so much data now, and I think that that's kind of what plays into a lot of success that artists don't think about. So Spotify will provide you with the data of seeing who's been listening, what's the breakdown by city, and what's the breakdown by all the different demographics you could possibly want on basically all your listeners. And that's a huge deal. And I think that kind of having data also has made our marketing plan smarter, right? So it's making sure you get on a playlist, and then once you see, which playlist you've done well on and see the data of who's been listening, it kind of helps you inform what your next single might be. And that in turn results in better playlisting because you've looked at who's listening and what music is resonating better. And that's then going to impact the playlisting you get. And the more people hear your song on a playlist, the more streams you have, the more kind of growth potential you have. But if you're also thinking about your fans really as audience segments, you can really cater to them. And, for me, that's like I think that that's an often overlooked part of when you think about playlisting is like, you just think, I'm going to get on the playlist, I'm going to be a hit. Like, no, that is not how it works. Like, you get on the playlist, and if somebody, let's say, listens to the song in front of you, skips your song and listens to the song after you, that's going to impact how long you stay in that position on the playlist, whether or not you move down or get taken off, how many people go directly to your song, how many people repeat listen to your song. So you have this huge moment on a playlist, but there's so much data that impacts where you are on the playlist, how you stay on the playlist, and then having all this data afterwards, being able to analyze it in real time or after the fact, can really make strides in an artist's career, just in terms of, like I said, picking a single or even thinking about where you go on tour, for example.
Exactly. You may find an audience that you had no idea even existed until you looked at your demographics, and you may see, like, I had a huge audience in China. I had no idea. I had a huge audience in Denmark. Maybe I need to go to Denmark. That it's crazy that you have every piece of information. You know so much about your listeners, and you've never even met half of them or any of them. And you know exactly where they live, what kind of music they're listening to, how long they're listening to it, what parts of the song they're listening to. So you can literally even cater certain parts of your music. Like if people are listening to, say, like 1 minute to 45 seconds, they're probably listening to the chorus and the pre-chorus. So you can literally almost copy and paste your chorus and then tweak it a little bit so that your choruses sound very similar. And it's crazy that never existed until today. And I just thought about how crazy that is right now. Like, you can literally go back into a song that you're working on and cater it to a song that's doing really well on a Spotify playlist. So it sounds similar. It has similar, rhythms or similar melodies or instruments or vocal riffs or whatever it may be. And that's so powerful to have that information at your fingertips. All you need is a username and a password.
And, the reason why I brought it up is because you were talking about, like, what is the next big thing? And I think that a lot of that is coming from paying attention to the data and paying attention to the world around us. So, you've mentioned Spotify quite a bit. Spotify purchased Gimlet, which is a podcasting company, and you and I are on a podcast, but Spotify is obviously heavily investing in podcasting. Mm-hmm. They see a real value in podcasting. This podcast might become a hit on Spotify.
Hopefully.
Shameless plug, Spotify.
Shameless plug. Hey, here we are.
But, I think that, like when you're talking about different marketing plans and all these different platforms and what's next, there's just so much opportunity, and there's so much it can kind of dictate that, whether it's just paying attention to your listeners' consumption habits or looking at data or thinking outside the box, right? Because if every one of your marketing plans is just going based on best practices, then you're never going to push anything forward. And I think that's true of every streaming platform. And I think it's true of kind of everything in this industry, which is, instead of thinking about, well, what's worked really well, we should be thinking about what's worked really well and what is going to work really well, which is exactly what your point was. Like, what can we do that's the next big, great thing?
And I think the next big thing is going to be, after we continue to analyze this data, and it's literally unlimited. You have so much data, and every platform has a different analytic that, may be different or may collect information differently, or may even have an additional feature. Like Apple Music may have a different feature and analytic that Spotify doesn't, and Spotify and Apple Music may have something completely different than what Tidal uses. So combining all three of them together, you have all the power. It's mind-blowing. And kind of going back a little bit, back to basics. I remember back in my high school days, I was kind of the music nerd, and everybody, they couldn't find a DJ, so I'm like, yeah, I'll DJ. And I remember going back and having to purchase songs on iTunes. And I had to go out and like buy iTunes cards, so I had money to purchase these songs for 99 cents or I think $1.29. And now look, you can go to bring a computer. I have an Apple Music subscription, and create a playlist, and or just anytime somebody requests a song, search it and then stream it right there. There's no purchase necessary. As funny as that sounds. And it's just so funny how that happens, because DJs back in the day, they had cases of CDs or vinyl records, and then they moved to, having downloaded these tracks and then having to purchase them over the years, and now you have a streaming service where you can literally set up a table and just take song requests, and because you pay $9.99 a month for a streaming subscription, you have access to 30, 40, 50 million songs. And that is totally insane to me.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it allows you to experience and to enjoy and to be exposed to so much more music than ever before. And I think it also plays into the idea of where your audience lives and who your audience can be, and thinking very broadly about that, because when we talk about all these different platforms, I actually think that each of them has a very different audience base. So there's a reason why certain artists resonate more on Apple Music, or why you can see huge success on YouTube Music because there's a visual attached to it, or why Spotify is such a bridge builder, or why Tidal can have such experiences and such exclusive music and high quality audio. There are different audiences that live for each of these platforms. And those different audiences are drawn to different types of artists and different consumption patterns. So you're talking about how you used to have to purchase songs, but now you can just stream them. But I think about my mother, right? And my mom has a Sirius XM subscription, and she has it solely for the Billy Joel channel. Not even kidding. She has no interest in radio other than
She's got good
the Billy
taste.
Joel channel. And I said to her one day, I was like, Mom, why don't you just get Spotify? Make your own Billy Joel playlist. Listen to it all day. And she really, and this is coming from someone who, I am such a music fanatic. I like live and breathe these platforms. And she was like, well, I don't really know how to use that. I was like, wow, this is a moment, because you have to think about who your audience is. If I'm Billy Joel, I'm going to be more concerned about a certain age range, let's say, and how am I going to reach those people? And it might not be the way that he would reach you or the way that he would reach me, because my mom's not on Spotify, but she's listening to Sirius XM solely to hear Billy Joel music and to hear like every 2 hours him explain the meaning behind a song.
But those are like the serious fans. Like your mom is clearly a diehard Billy Joel fan. I don't blame her.
She's not.
Oh, she's not.
That's the craziest thing. She's not a diehard Billy Joel fan.
Oh my goodness.
She's not. She likes Billy Joel. She thinks it's really cool that there's an entire station of just his music, and she loves that she has this feeling of exclusivity of behind the scenes when he talks about his music. She loves this commentary. So like if I were to ask her who her favorite artist is, she probably would not say Billy Joel.
Interesting.
She loves Billy Joel, but it wouldn't be her number one.
Interesting.
And that's what's really important as a marketing director for me, is to always think about, make sure that I don't have the localization effect, right? To not assume that the way in which I consume music is how the fan consumes music. It's really important to think about other people. So I live in Manhattan, and therefore I ride the subway a lot, which means I don't drive, which means I don't necessarily listen to radio as frequently because I am underground, or, I have access to my hands at all times. I'm on a subway. I can click through and click on the next song, whatever. But if I were to live in, let's say, rural Arizona, I might drive a lot more. In which case, radio might be my predominant source of finding new music, because I don't have, my hands are on a steering wheel and I don't have access to my hands, and I'm just going to put on what's there. So how do I think about fans from a larger scale than my own personal habits, right? Making sure that I'm not localizing it to myself, but I'm really thinking about who the fan is and how I'm going to reach them. So if I'm reaching an older audience, or, I want my mom who loves the Billy Joel channel, I'm going to start thinking about Sirius XM, not because that skews older, but because I know that people who drive might have Sirius. So that might be in different states than New York, or it might be different ages. And again, that plays into data, right? Looking at where people are listening to music and who they are, and then being able to reach them. How am I going to achieve that? And it's making sure that I'm really thinking about that from the shoes of who we really believe the fan can be and who the fans are.
So, and at the end of the day, you would ultimately agree that the marketing and everything, the song is, what does the consumer want? You have to create content and make it available and accessible, like you were saying earlier, to what the fan wants. If the fans want some kind of video played on this platform at this time, and you're going to get a huge audience from it, then that's probably what you're going to do. You know, what do the fans want? What are the fans listening to? And it comes down to the data that you have access to. What do the fans want? What are they listening to? Where are they listening to it? What time are they listening to it? How long are they listening to it? Is it an older audience? Is it a younger audience? You know, do they listen to the explicit version more? Do they listen to the clean version more? And it's like, what does the consumer want? That's what any good business does. You find a need in society and you fill it with your talent and your skills and what they want.
It's about validating both voices.
100%.
You want to validate the fan's voice. The fans will tell you what they want. They will tweet at you. They'll message you. They'll comment. They'll tell you what they want. They'll show you that they loved something by watching it over and over again and increasing your YouTube views. And they'll show you that they loved a song by streaming it over and over again and seeing your Spotify streams skyrocket. The fans will tell you what they want. And it's really important to hear their voice and listen to it and validate it. And the other side of that balance is balancing the artist's voice, because at the end of the day, it has to be authentic to the artist, or else the artist won't believe in it and the fans will know. It's so important that an artist's voice is always predominant. And I think you look at some big stars and you realize that, you know, the fans think they want one thing, but the artist knows what their voice is, and they almost let their voice show the fans what they want sometimes. Someone like Taylor Swift has reinvented herself in so many different ways. And I don't think her fans said, oh, I want the next phase of Taylor to go from like the girl with the long curly hair who was like very like middle America sweetheart to the bad girl with the red lipstick and the short haircut. I don't think the fans were dictating that. I think Taylor was. And in turn, the fans found that that's what they wanted. And there were new fans who came along the way. And so it's always that perfect balance between the audience, the fan, the consumer. That voice really matters. It's going to impact how we market and who we market and what we do. And then the artist voice, because we should never lose sight of the music. And the music should always kind of be this central focus. And the artist knows who they are and who they want to be to the fans. And that has to be a significant point of everything you do.
And you have to, like, if the artist has a certain vision, you have to kind of take that into consideration when you're doing, like, the artist may not have, like, oh, you're going to get the most traction with doing this or saying this or having it on this platform. They may have something different, but at the same time, you're like, this is what's going to make you most successful. You're going to get a lot of streams through this. You're going to garner a lot of traction. But the artist is like, well, I think I want to put that money into a music video. Well, it's like, the music video isn't feasible at this time because we don't have the budget for that currently. But you need a bigger audience before we start investing a lot of money into music videos. So, like, how important is that connection to make sure that you're honoring what you're doing with the artist's music and you're not just basically taking it from them and, you know, as they try to chase you, you're putting a hand to them and they're just running into your fist.
Yeah, I always think of my plans as not what's going to make the artist most successful, but as what's going to achieve the artist's end goal and the label's end goal. And sometimes that's not necessarily about having the most sales right away. It might be about increasing their following, like I mentioned earlier. And I think one of the things that most marketing directors struggle with most is juggling the label's needs and the artist's needs, is making sure that you are simultaneously building the label, building the company you work for, building their growth, and also building the artist growth, because sometimes those can come in conflict. For me personally, I think I struggle with that less, but only because I always keep both of those things as a central point of everything. And I'm always pretty honest and upfront about it. So I believe that the reason why I'm working with an artist is because I come with a skill set. I come with a passion. I come with the experience that I can give them something that they couldn't find or do or know on their own. I give them a knowledge base. So if they have an idea and it's amazing, I'm going to figure out how to execute it. And if they have an idea that maybe isn't the best strategy, I'm going to be really honest with them and explain to them why that isn't the best strategy. What is a better strategy that still is getting them to what they're trying to achieve, but is maybe doing it in a way that I know could achieve the goal better, for lack of another term. And I think I always approach the label the same way, which is I know that I'm working for a company, and I'm working for this company because I want to be here. I want to be at this company, so I want to see you succeed. I want to grow you. So I'm going to figure out how I'm helping you grow and sustain yourself while also helping the artist do it. And I'm going to always try and find the way that achieves both of those things at once. And like I said, it's not always easy, but I sincerely believe that it is always possible. And I've always found a way to make those two things work hand in hand.
That's cool. And I can imagine that would be very difficult at times. And, the word impossible itself says I'm possible. I know that sounds very cheesy and cliche, but it's true.
You went there. You made such a cheesy joke.
I did. I went there. I really did. It's kind of a dad joke, like a dad motivation joke.
Oh my God, it's a motivational poster in like a college counselor's office.
It really, it definitely is. So going back just a little bit to our streaming discussion, we were talking about like Spotify and Apple Music and Tidal and YouTube. Do you find that one platform is more important than others? Does it matter on the genre? Does it matter on the artist vision? Do you find like, we have to be on Spotify. We have to have X amount of dollars for a Spotify campaign. We have to make like Spotify, or Apple Music. Or is it just kind of like whatever the artist wants and you just kind of go with the flow and make sure that everything's kind of available everywhere?
What I will say is that each streaming platform serves a unique audience and a unique purpose. So there is so much to gain through a platform like Spotify that I love and I think does amazing things for artists and marketing. And there is so much to gain through a platform like Tidal, who creates experiences and exclusivity and focuses on the sound quality and thinks of fans from that perspective. I just think when you're creating a marketing campaign, it's important to ensure that you're on every platform, but to think about who the ideal partner is and why, and then dictate that based on the music.
Okay, so it just kind of comes down to like the music genre and just kind of like the ultimate vision of the artist, and obviously like taking the demographics and all of your analytics into consideration as well. Like, do you see very little interaction on Apple Music, but you see a lot of interaction on Spotify? Then maybe you should push more for Spotify. That's what I'm envisioning anyways.
I think that's part of it. I also think it's part of what is the best partnership. You're going to try and push it on all platforms, but what is the best partnership in terms of what can be done for that artist, right? Because each of these, whether it's the YouTube space or a Tidal experience or Spotify singles or Spotify artist marketing campaigns or billboards, those are all such different pinpoints that can lead to different things. So in that sense, it's also about, what is the greatest partnership potential for this specific artist? So it's not just where the fans are consuming, but also where you can achieve the most to reach new fans.
Okay. That makes sense, because like I've gotten a couple questions before, and like I see artists all the time, like they're just pushing Spotify, playlist. Can you stream this on Spotify? Can you make sure when you write the article, can you embed the Spotify playlist or the Spotify embed code for the track or the album or the EP? And I just see like, is this all you push? Like every time you push Spotify, like what about giving Apple Music some love? Because for me, I'm an Apple Music lover. That's what I use. I use Spotify, but I use the free version, but I don't use it like to listen to music a lot. Like in the car, I always use Apple Music, just because I like you have different reasons why. I mean, one being the audio quality. I just feel like Apple's quality of music, or the file they use, is better quality than the 320 kilobit MP3 file that Spotify uses. So
That's the thing, is that you can hear that difference, but the average listener probably can't.
Right.
So I think it's important to never neglect any opportunity to reach your fans, because if you put something, there used to be this idea that I should put my music on one platform so that platform feels really special and they support me most. The flaw in that is that not all your fans use that platform. So what you're really saying is, I'm so happy you're my fan, but I'm going to penalize you for not using the platform I like best. That's a real problem. You're neglecting a huge part of your audience out of what you think will lead to growth, but all it will do is alienate your fans. And you never want to do that. So I always think it's pretty important to come up with a plan for every platform, especially if I'm working at a record label. I'm going to come up with a plan for every platform. Whereas if I was working at one of these streaming platforms, I would take all these skills and insider knowledge I have from working with artists and working at labels, and then use that to build amazing marketing campaigns for the platform and grow the platform through those marketing campaigns with artists and with labels, and knowing kind of what the priority is and how they allocate their budgets and how you write a marketing plan, and thinking about that from the partner side, from the streaming side, and saying, well, I know that this is what's significant to a label, so I'm going to create this opportunity for artists.
it comes down to, like, I know I've asked a lot of friends, like, what do you use? Do you use Apple Music or Spotify? I mean, I would like to use Spotify, but because they have their student discount program, and it comes down to like, oh, I can't afford it because everything is subscription based these days. So like if you're alienating people, you're basically telling them like, you have to use this platform, but the fan may or may not be able to afford that right now because they have to, feed their cats, or they have to put gas in their car, or they need that extra money for food, or, you can't say like, if everybody was paying for every platform, we would be spending hundreds, $200 a month alone on streaming services when they all do the same thing and they all have the same catalog, similar catalogs, I guess you should say. So,
which brings up a good point. Subscription. I heard someone say this once, and I thought it was quite smart, which is, you have access to a lot of music for free. The concept of subscription is that you're going to pay a monthly fee. Now think about that in terms of ownership. If you were to buy one album at $10, you own one album. Or you can spend $10 a month and own all the music you've ever loved. So the equivalent is really that maybe you don't own it in your personal catalog, but you have access to it all the time, offline, online, without ads. And so your value is actually significantly more than what you would have spent on the one album, because now you have access to infinite music. And so that's what I think the mentality of streaming music really needs to be, which is that I'm paying for a subscription, but what I'm really paying for is infinite value.
And that's crazy because, like, it kind of goes back to earlier when I was talking about DJing and how a DJ can literally set up shop, have a subscription to Apple Music, and play music all night long for $9.99 a month.
Exactly.
And they'll probably make $500 to $2,000 a night, if not more.
I think it's important to support your favorite artists as well, and to support the platforms you love. So if you are the diehard Spotify fan, then pay for it. Keep them alive. And if you are a diehard fan of like Manchester Orchestra, which is a great band, if you haven't listened to them, I do recommend. But if you're a diehard fan of Manchester Orchestra, buy tickets to their concerts, buy their merch, stream their music over and over and over again, because that's going to keep them strong as well. So I think it all comes back to, it's very easy for us to, in our daily lives, say, well, I have to think about my budgets and my finances. Now think about the things that matter to you. Music is making everything in your life better. Imagine a movie without any music in it. I would not watch that movie. I want to watch a TV show without any music in it. Think about just that ding in Law & Order. That's music, and that makes every scene different, So if this is something that is literally enriching your life or literally like a huge part of everything that you do, it's okay to spend $10 a month on it, friends. That is not so much money to give you the world.
Right. That's just
music.
It's if you think about it, that's skip Starbucks twice a month. That's really all it is. I mean, a Starbucks actually skips Starbucks once a month because a Starbucks is about $10. Or skip that lunch you go out for. Skip the McDonald's meal for 2 times to have that extra $10 if you're really on that strict of a budget.
Be willing to invest in your own happiness. I invest in my happiness. So I invest my time working for companies and artists and things I love. And I invest my money on being able to support music and platforms I love. And I invest my soul by eating cupcakes. I invest in my happiness.
I would too. I invested, somebody brought in a dozen free donuts today, and I invested in my happiness by eating one of those donuts. Only one, because I had to share some. I had to save some for the rest of the office. I got the first choice though because I'm the one that received them. So I picked the Fruity Pebbles donut. So it was very good. It was very good. But you have to be, like you said, you have to be willing, to support those things. It's okay to indulge yourself. Like, we're so caught up doing things for so many other people and doing things for work and getting things done for our bosses and meeting numbers and, crunching numbers and spreadsheets and emails. But we forget that it's okay to spend $10 a month on music that you for surely will use going to and from work, when you're working out, when you're making dinner, when you're meal prepping, when you have friends over, or when you're just relaxing. It's okay to spend a little bit of money and, support the artists and the platforms that you love.
And it builds an ambiance. I went out to dinner this past week, and we went to this restaurant where the music that was playing was like all the hit songs you've ever heard, but done in cover song in the style of swing. Oh my God. I never thought I'd love this so much, but it totally made the mood of this whole restaurant was this like swing cover playlist on Spotify. And we asked them, we were all like, what is this playlist? Like, where is this from? Yeah. What are you playing right now? And it made the environment of that restaurant so different than it would have been without these like insane swing covers. Like, think of Hey Yeah as a like saloon song. Okay. It was amazing. It was awesome. So cool.
Yeah.
So
it's funny how music has that power to just totally change an entire ambience in a restaurant, in a bar, in a club, in a whatever, wherever you're, in a grocery
anything
store.
At a party.
It's just like it's that powerful. And then you get rid of, like, there's been times where I went into grocery stores and there's no music. And I'm like looking around like, what is missing in here? It's so weird in here. I know. Oh, they're not playing music. And it just feels so weird.
Oh, no, I totally agree. I think that when there isn't music playing, it almost feels like a sense of emptiness. And I stand by high school me and still think that I have impeccable taste. So I happen to make amazing playlists. So if you are looking for good music, you can always find me on Spotify. Liat Abada. My playlists are awesome.
Definitely. I will put those. You'll definitely have to send them to me, and I will put them in the show notes so we can all be followers of your playlist and continually
awesome
feed your high school self of being the king or queen of playlist curation.
You know what? Here's the thing. In high school, I was a person who wanted to connect my friends to music. In college, I went to a school where I was able to design my own major, and my major was music business, music journalism, vocal performance, and like the art of being on stage. And that's literally what I've done with my career, is like taken those things that I loved in high school, studied them in college, made it into an entire career. And I don't think many people can say they've done that. And I've done that because I've always been driven by passion and love for music. And that's totally led my life.
That's so cool. And like, I mean, we talked about it like very early in the show that not a lot of people are doing what they love. And like for you to be able to do that and have gone to as far as going to college and then creating your own degree program where you're able to focus on 4 different things and then bring them into your work life and personal life is like, what? Like, how did she do that? Like, how does one do that? And it's passion, it's hard work, it's charisma, it's tenacity.
Yeah. And it's working with great people also. I really believe that everybody you work with is a chance to learn from. I still keep in touch with so many people I've worked for. I literally was texting Caroline Abbs, who's someone I worked very closely with at Sony in the past, who now like runs their Latin marketing. And I was texting her today. She's amazing. I was texting Scott Carter, who works at Epic, earlier this week. The people that you meet, they're brilliant, and they're all so knowledgeable in something. And so every person you work with is an opportunity to learn from. And it's also an opportunity for you to teach them, because you should always know your own value, always know your own worth, and be confident in that. And if you're confident in what you're doing and your strengths, then of course you're going to be happy, because you know that you're doing well, you're doing great.
And you're confident in what you're doing. So you don't kind of hide back and be like, I'm not really comfortable with doing or saying that. You know, like, no, I know I can do this. I know I'm good at that.
That's right. I believe in leading by empowering other people to have a voice as well. So I think it's really important to make sure that my voice is clear and that people know why I think we should do something, why I'm passionate about it, why it's the right move, what's the best strategy behind it, but then also letting other people feel empowered to share their opinions, feel empowered to give ideas, because it's the only way that you can learn and in turn also teach.
Absolutely. And like just with this conversation, like we've had so much fun. I've learned so much about you and your personal career, and then even about the different music streaming and how to take marketing and really tailor it and really take into account everything that's going on or that is going to happen. You know, that like not many people think of that. And then just being in the position that you're in and having to oversee so many people in so many different aspects, and then maintaining different visions and viewpoints and budgets and all this stuff, like that takes a special person to do that. You know, so if you can do it, then I can do it, and Joe Schmo can do it. And you learn like how to manage these things. Like you learn that maybe I need to become a total nerd over to-do lists. You know, like maybe I need to geek out over to-do lists and geek out over productivity software, like just weird things like that. You know, maybe I need to become one of those people and just start learning like different to-do lists.
Exactly.
But it can be done, and you're proof of that. So it is possible.
Well, thank you.
Can you walk us through kind of like from the beginning to actually like executing this type of project or this marketing plan? And I know every plan is going to be different and it's going to have different variables, but just kind of give us a little bit of a watered down version of from like the first inception or meeting to the last one being like, we're going live and then we're done.
Of how to create a marketing plan.
Right. Like I know this could be like a whole podcast in itself, but just like, barely touch on, everything, kind of walk us through.
Okay. So if I'm going to extremely water down a marketing plan and how you create one to very bare bones here and really skim over a lot of it, you would start with meeting with the artist and their manager, either on the phone or in person, and talking about the music. Obviously, you need to have music to listen to, assuming that this is based on like a release coming up. Because if we're talking about things like before music or for a tour, it's a whole other thing. But let's just go with one example, just to keep this simple.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about music coming out, you're going to listen to the music. You're going to speak to the artist and their management to kind of get at what their goal is with this music. Is this a first single to lead up to a hit single that they want to go to radio with? Is it maybe a full album where they want to put out one song at a time and each song's a single? Or do they want to just drop the album at once? Like, what are they envisioning? What is their goal with it? Is their goal to build social media or go to radio? Or is their goal to just consistently get better and better streaming? So if they start on a smaller playlist with this song, their goal is to get with a bigger playlist on the next one. What's that goal? And you go to that meeting knowing some goals in your own head, because again, like you're going as an expert. So while it's really important to know what the artist and their management has in mind, you also should go with an opinion, an idea of, well, I've listened to this music and here's what I think. And you're going to build a plan based on every single touch point and every single vertical. So in your plan, you're going to talk about, you'll start with logistics, which is like release dates and advertising plans and kind of like very nitty-gritty logistic-esque things, like when you're going to announce things, when will a press release go up, when are you going to start a social media countdown, so on and so forth. And then you're going to build out a section for every single department and every single opportunity you can possibly have. So you might write about digital marketing, which could be things like contesting. It could be influencers, which is a whole other conversation. Very, very important to look at data when you're thinking about influencers. It could be talking about different platforms that aren't necessarily based in music, something like Reddit, so on and so forth. And then you might have a section that's about social media, which could include images you want to post. It could include videos, when these images will go live, when you're going to announce the music is coming out, what it's going to say, who partner-wise you might have posts about it as well, who their friends are, who are musicians, anything that could possibly fall under social media. And then you might have a section for publicity where you'll talk about your target. You'll speak to the publicist and you'll talk about targets for the single, for the video, for the album. You'll also go through press releases, which you'll write out, and the publicist will write it. I'll review it. The manager will review it. The artist will review it. It'll be approved, so on and so forth. You'll have a section for sales, which will be talking about just like how much are we going to spend for, let's say, advertising on each streaming platform or consumption platform? Are we going to do a physical packaging? What's that going to look like? What were your previous sales history? What do we suspect or predict your sales will be for this single, for this album? Your streams will be the streaming equivalents of it. We'll have a section for international marketing, which could, if you're a new artist, it could be very bare bones, which is just saying that international isn't going to be engaged until we have a real story in the US, or it could be very elaborate. If you're someone like Pink, who has a massive presence around the world, the international portion of your marketing plan is going to be very widespread and adept. You'll have a section for partnerships, for brand partnerships. You might already have brand sponsors on board. I might have ideas for brand sponsors. You'll have a portion for live activation, events, ideas, not just touring, but I think it's really important to think about experiences that you can have with your fans. I did an entire campaign around the idea of partying with Andrew WK. It was amazing, super cool, and a massive success because we played on the idea that Andrew's a live personality that his fans love. So it's not necessarily just about his music, it's about his fans getting to hang out with him. How do we get his fans to consume his music, playing off the idea that they'll get to spend time with him? So run a contest where you can win a taco party with Andrew WK if you pre-save his album. Awesome. You might have a section that is based on radio, depending whether or not you're going to radio with this song, where you might talk about the time frame in which you're going to ship to radio, like start sending the music to radio, when you're going to impact radio, so when you might start getting ads at radio, the markets you might start with, places that you want the artist to go to, you want the liners to record. You might have a music video section where you're going to talk about the video, the behind the scenes, the snippets that'll be used in advertisements. You can have an advertising section. Really, the sky's the limit. Your marketing plan should be sure to cover every single department and every single base point that could remotely impact your artist, and then to also think beyond that. Think of something new. Have a portion that you've never written for any artist before that is so specific to this artist that even the headline of it doesn't say publicity. It says something so unique that could only appeal to this song. It says the song is called Candy in the Rain. I have an entire section dedicated to candy companies that I'm going to use to send candy to influencers and to licensing folks so that they will open a wrapper that says the artist's name and then eat the candy and think of them. And they'll have a magnet that's a clipper that closes a bag of candy in case they don't finish it. And that way they're always looking back on that artist. You're going to have merch sections, everything that you could possibly think about, licensing, syncs, all of that should be in there, but it should always be so specific to the artist and the end goal.
Oh, goodness, you gave me a whole new level of anxiety.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I have to be honest, it is very, very hard.
I appreciate it.
To
it's a good anxiety.
explain a marketing plan, especially to think about it in such vague, abstract terms and to talk about it on kind of a high level as opposed to thinking about how you drive down into it. It's actually surprisingly hard to do. I didn't realize how difficult it would be to answer that question.
No, and you answered it so thoroughly because there were even portions in there, like you kept rattling them off, and I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, I never thought of that. Like the candy portion, I like that portion. And like you named so many other things, like I'd have to re-listen to it and really like dive into it. But my goodness. So do you have like how long, before I ask that, how long does it usually take to complete like the marketing plan? Like take your favorite project or your most proud project and how long did it take from start to finish? How many pages was the marketing plan? All that stuff.
Writing a marketing plan is very time consuming. In my opinion, it's not always the best spend of time, because the idea of a marketing plan is that you're going to have a written document of everything you want to do on the artist. And that's amazing. That's awesome. That's great. Is that really motivating anyone internally to achieve those goals? No, they know what they want to do. Like, each of those departments doesn't need to read necessarily every other department's goals. They need to know how other departments are impacting them. But they don't necessarily need a 10-page document. And they're not necessarily going to read it. So I think it's really important when it comes to marketing plans to think of, why are you writing this? Are you writing this because it will help everyone internally stay on goal? Then you should do it. Are you writing this because an artist asks to see everything you have in mind? Then you should do it. If you are writing this solely to say, I have done all this work, then you have wasted time that you could have spent actually doing the work, because it is very time consuming to write. So I don't think you need to necessarily write a full marketing plan for every single artist, as long as it exists. Meaning, I could have that marketing plan for myself in existence, but I don't necessarily need to write and format a 20-page document to share with 100 people if it's not going to help any of those people succeed further. If it's just going to take time out of their day for them to read 4 pages about a radio plan when they, right now are focusing on writing a press release, then I haven't done justice to the artist. So it is very time consuming to write a marketing plan. It's really important to have the plan. It's just not necessarily as important to make it beautiful and send to everyone on earth.
Right. So
it's important for me as a project manager, as a product manager, as a marketing director, to always know what's going on with every single department, and to make sure every department that needs to coincide with other departments have that opportunity and know the information in real time anytime they need it. But it doesn't mean that if it's not going to be conducive to share or spend 18 hours on a marketing plan, not that it takes 18 hours, but you know what I mean, then you have to really think about, what is the best way that I'm motivating people and keeping people on track? And if this document is so important to share, then I should share it. And if it is less conducive to share it at this moment, then I don't have to, because I'm still on top of it, and I know that I'm on top of all these touch points.
So would you attest to, or even agree to, just writing a marketing plan for somebody like yourself, just so you can oversee kind of everything and keep yourself reminded of what needs to get done and who's all involved in the project and kind of what the goals are? Because like you said, the manager and the artist may know exactly what to expect, and then you have the advertising agency that knows exactly what they're doing. But at the same time, these companies, or these different portions and legs of the project and the marketing plan, aren't aware of what everybody else is doing. They're just reporting the numbers, and you're kind of formulating everything and then providing it to everybody. So do you think it's important for somebody like yourself in a position where you're managing so many people to have a marketing plan, so you can kind of be like, oh yeah, that's right, the advertising agency was doing this, or the manager and the artist were doing this, or the publicist was reaching out to these publications and trying to secure this press?
I guess that would depend on who the marketing director is, what their style of organization is, because having a marketing plan, first thing, one of the reasons why I think a marketing plan in theory can be very time consuming is because it should constantly be changing. If you are referring back to one document all the time and saying this is what should have been done, you're not adjusting. And that's one of the most important pieces of advice I can give to anyone writing a marketing plan, is that it is a living, breathing document. It should be changing as the campaign is changing. You should be changing your goals as things are occurring. As you're seeing what's gaining traction, what's working, what isn't working, you should be adjusting everything you wrote in that plan. That plan should never be set in stone, and it should be a starting point. It should not be your end point, because you should be adjusting based on what's happening, what's really building. That's what your marketing plan should be constantly changing. So in that sense, if you're constantly going back to a document and then changing the wording in it daily, that might work for some people in terms of an organizational structure. That might not work for other people. Other people might rather just have a file on their computer, like a Google Doc, where they keep notes on what's the latest thing going on with the publicity team, what's the latest thing going on with the radio team. They might rather just do that, or they might have a to-do list. I think that's just an organizational structure thing. I do believe that most marketing plans are more outward facing than inward. They're not usually written for the person who's writing it. I wouldn't necessarily write it for myself because I happen to have a very good memory. And so I also like keep track of everything that's going on in a much more concise manner. I do think marketing plans are usually written for other people, which is why I said if you're writing it because other people need it, or it's going to help other people and keep them on track, or it's because an artist or management requested it, then it's worthwhile. But if you're writing it solely because you're like, look at all this work I'm doing, then it's not a good spend of your time. And part of that is because you do need to constantly be changing your marketing plan. You may have to even change your end goal at some point through the campaign, but assuming that your end goal stays the same, you should be thinking of ways to improve the methodology that you're getting there as you're in the middle of it. That's what A/B testing ads is, right? When you think about advertisements, the reasons why you might run 2 separate creatives for the same ad is so that you can see which ad is performing better and then use that and then build future ads based on that. So you're still working towards that same end goal, but you're improving your methodology while you're doing it.
Absolutely.
That's how every marketing plan should function.
Right. And then like when, if you do say Instagram marketing for influencers and you're like, you didn't get a good response, then maybe for the next release or 2, you might not want to invest in that, or spend time on that. And you might want to spend maybe Facebook advertising. It did really well, or Facebook marketing or whatever you did on Facebook did really well. So you can spend your time and money on that rather than Instagram and seeing a low, return on interest. So, or return on investment, I should say. So it totally makes sense. But, these things people don't really think of these things. But it's like, if this isn't going to work or isn't conducive to the workflow or to a certain team, then forget it. Let's move on and let's start working. Time is money.
And it's important that if you are going to share a marketing plan with other people, that you are explaining to them that this marketing plan is what exists now. But it's not what you should be staring back at every day. Because if you're constantly looking back at it saying, well, we didn't do it this way that's written in the plan, there's a reason why. There's a reason why we chose to do something else that worked better. And so it's really important to kind of manage those expectations in a way of whomever you're sharing it with. For me, it's so important to keep communication really strong with every department I'm working with, making sure that they all know what's going on with other teams. And that might be better done. Sometimes it's best done in a marketing plan, and sometimes it's better done in other ways. And that's okay, because that's what I mean about meeting people's communication styles, is meeting them in the way that's going to best move the project forward.
Do you have like a checklist or a template of all the things like you've mentioned or things that would go in a marketing plan? I'm not saying like this is what you have to have in every single marketing plan. It's just something like, if an artist wants to do this, they can be like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that, and let's try this. Like maybe there's something in there, like a different, like live TV. Let's try that, and let's tamper with that a little bit and see. Like, do you have like a checklist of a Word document or something that I could share with the listeners so that maybe if they're trying to go at this, they'll have like a template and maybe trying to generate some new ideas or some different methods that they never thought about?
They can hit me up and I can speak to them about what they need and help them come up with a checklist. I mean, I have checklists for myself, but I also think it's like pretty important to not just give out a blind checklist, especially if it's associated with your name, because then people think there may unfortunately accidentally be a conceived notion that they must adhere to a checklist that then is attached to my name that may not apply to them in any way,
Valid point. Okay, because I just thought like you had mentioned so many things, like they can always go back and listen to the show and get ideas.
Yeah.
But that's a good point. Again, I learned something new. Never thought of it that way.
You should be careful what you put your name on.
So how can the listeners keep up with you or reach out to you if they have any questions, and I'm sure they will, on anything that you had said or mentioned in the show?
If anybody wants to keep in touch, has further questions, wants to reach out to me, so on and so forth, they can reach me at vegmusicmarketing@gmail.com. So VEDGE musicmarketing@gmail.com.
Perfect. And I will put that in the show notes as well so people can reach out, like you said, if they have any questions about anything you had said. I had so much fun. So thanks again for being such a wonderful guest and sharing all the information and insight on being a director of marketing and making a marketing plan and the different streaming services.
It was such a pleasure to be on the show. I appreciate you having me on this podcast. I think it was a really interesting and exciting phone call, and I love speaking about music to anyone, so I had a great time.
And there we have it. I had such a great conversation with Miss Liat, like the Fiat car, and she talked so much knowledge, and I learned so much about marketing plans and communicating with so many people and kind of conforming your different marketing communication strategies to fit everybody else's needs and wants versus what you want. You know, like if you work best out of email, but somebody else works best out of Facebook Messenger, then maybe you might want to think of communicating through Facebook Messenger. It's all about conforming and working best with your team so that you can all achieve the same goal and make sure that you're all getting good results. So I'm so glad that Liat took the chance and took the time to be on the show because I learned so much, and I hope you did as well. And just a couple friendly reminders before I let you go and we see you next week on the show. Friendly reminder that I encourage you to sign up to my mailing list, which helps me notify you when new episodes like this are live. And I also encourage you to support me on Patreon, which all the money that I make through Patreon will go right back into the show so I can make it all better for you. I would appreciate a 5-star rating and a review in Apple Podcasts, as it greatly helps me grow the show and help it be discovered by new listeners like yourselves. Lastly, there is a guest request form, so if you or somebody you know would be a good guest for the show, please fill it out or send it over to them to be filled out, and I will reach out if you or the guest is a good guest for the show. So I want to thank you again for tuning into this week's episode of When Life Hands You Lemons. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Miss Liat, and we will see you next week on When Life Hands You Lemons.